Okay, so moving on then here with Chapter 3 of Rudolf Steiner's analysis of the Gospel of John. These lectures were given in 1908. They were actually given earlier than the lectures on Luke and Matthew and Mark. In fact, he gave them in reverse order to the order in which they were written. But he starts off, he's still meditating on this idea of the Logos and what the Logos is and what it represents. And he starts off by talking about this idea of Lemuria. And here is a map, a hypothetical sketch, as it says here, for Lemuria, somewhere off the coast of Africa. Normally it's placed over here in the Pacific. But this person, whoever it was, has Lemuria over off the coast of Africa. And last time we suggested that when Steiner says that the human soul incarnated into human beings during the period of Lemuria, I was thinking of Homo habilis as a tool maker, and tool making and speech are connected. And so it occurred to me that it is possible that Steiner is somehow intuiting the presence of Africa, that he's actually thinking of, or not thinking of, but sort of intuiting the transformation from Australopithecines to tool making and language speaking Homo habilis in Africa, in East Africa here, where it was hypothesized in some cases that Lemuria was. Consequently, too, I think also when he talks about the myth of Atlantis and the sinking of Atlantis, it is very possible that there, too, he is intuiting and referring to the melting of the glaciers about 14,000 years ago, when the glaciers started melting at a very rapid rate, and a bunch of the caves were, like Kokay, for instance, were sank underwater during that period. And I think James Hansen of NASA estimated that the sea level rise was something like 20 feet per century. So it was catastrophically fast when those glaciers melted. So it is possible that he's picking up on his myth of Atlantis is intuiting that. Either way, so in this chapter, he talks about this idea that these human beings in Lemuria were asleep for a lot longer than we are today. We sleep for a third of our lives. We're awake for 16 hours. We sleep for 8 hours. And I think he's saying that it was a lot more, people slept a lot longer during that period. And that with regard to the two heavenly bodies now, the sun and the moon, and he has this idea, of course, that the moon was extruded from the earth, which it actually factually was about 4.5 billion years ago. It was extruded from the earth. And that the Logos is actually emanating from the sun. He says that just the way the human physical body is the vesture clothing the soul, so the sun is the physical vesture clothing the Logos, which is to say love and the beings of love. And he says then, he has this mythology where he says that there were these 7 beings associated with the sun, or within the sun's astral plane, let's say, not actually physically on the physical sun, but within the sun's astral supersensible plane, that there were 7 Elohim, one of which left. And that Elohim individual left to join the moon, to go to the moon, and this was Yahweh. So notice that he's a kind of neo-Gnostic, even though in this chapter he disputes with the Gnostics with the idea that he has, perhaps somewhat, it's arguable that the Gnostics are saying that Christ is an illusory being, like in Docetism. I don't think that's what they're saying. But in any event, and the Gnostics downgraded Yahweh as well. He's not the ultimate God either for them. Yaldabaoth. He becomes associated with the planet Saturn for the Gnostics. But here Steiner associates him with the moon. Now he says, so the mission of this particular incarnation of the earth, it's gone through Saturn, sun, moon, and now the earth phase proper, the material phase proper. It has a mission and it has a purpose. And actually I think he's correct about this, is that it is about the evolution and increase of love. So as we go through all of our incarnational processes, we're trying to learn about love, which is the toughest lesson down here to learn. Over there on the other side, it's easy. It's not a problem. It's not a game. It's not a challenge. Down here, all the ground rules are set up against it. So what has to be learned are things like forgiveness, getting over anger at someone, compassion and empathy. All of those types of things are the things that the spiritual beings on the other side are looking for. Those are the things that they want us to do. Those are the things that advance our soul's spiritual evolution. So that, as Steiner says, and I think he has this 100% correct, that eventually the earth, when it reaches the end of its cycle, when humans are done incarnating here, it will have been perfused completely with love, in such a way that it is perfused with what he calls wisdom. So he says that by wisdom, what he actually means isn't what we think the word means. It's not intelligence or knowledge from life experience. He says the previous epoch, the moon epoch, incarnation, that was the task of that epoch, was to perfuse the earth-moon system with wisdom, in the sense of what the Hindus mean by the word Vijnanamaya kosha. And the Vijnanamaya kosha, there are 5 sheaths, 5 koshas that the Atman is surrounded by. And the Vijnanamaya kosha is known as the sheath made of wisdom, and it's what makes the grass come up. It's what makes the trees come up. Steiner says, take a thigh bone and look at it. It isn't just a bone. Look carefully at it under a microscope. Look at all the wisdom perfused there with all of these hexagonal lattices that have been carefully thought out. He says, wasps invented paper long before human beings did. Their nests are made out of paper, and they're made exactly the same way that we make paper. So they were already instinctively making paper long before humans discovered how to do it. So by the time we get to the Earth itself, the moon's task, the moon phase task, has been accomplished. The Earth has been completely perfused with wisdom, with what the Hindus call Vijnanamaya kosha, the sheath made of wisdom, not intellect. That's a whole different thing. So the task now is to perfuse the earth with love in exactly the same way that the moon phase perfused it with wisdom. So he says, what is streaming down from the sun is the logos, and it is love. And so human beings have gradually had to learn over time the principle of the I am, what he calls the I am, individuality. Because love cannot be recognized in another person without a separate sense. There has to be a kind of interchange where you have 2 separate individuals who can love one another or experience love with one another because they have a secure sense of individuality of who they are. So a sense of individuality is absolutely essential for humanity to develop. So this is part of the process of learning love, is to develop this principle of individuality, which he says then that the Christ being then incarnated to bring down to the earth. So the Christ being is one of these Elohim beings. Later in the later lectures he'll say that the Christ being descended down into the Nathan boy. Here he just puts it that the Christ being is one of the Elohim who has come down to the earth, and it's absolutely essential that he be made visible, that the Word has to become flesh and experienced as an actual physical individual that is visible to the senses in order to convince others that love is real, that this is a real thing here. And this is why he disputes with the Gnostics, saying that Christ was an illusory being. Although I don't think some of the Gnostics might have said that, but I don't think they all did. But anyhow, so this being has to come down to radiate love. Because during the period when we were sleeping longer, as Lemurians, we slept longer, we could not receive love while awake. So we had to receive, the Yahweh being that left the sun as one of the Elohim was a being who had wisdom. This was a wisdom being, in the sense of the Vijnanamaya kosha of the Hindus, the Vedanta, and it had gone to the moon. And during sleep, while we were asleep, so when we're asleep, the physical body is there together with the etheric body, because if the etheric body is not there, then you have a corpse. But the astral body and the ego are out in the astral plane, and Yahweh is radiating down wisdom. He's perfusing that astral body with wisdom, but also with love, wisdom to make ready and to prepare the human species for the reception of love. In other words, for the mystery of Golgotha, the Christ event, that will come down and bring love. so that as the sleep cycle gets shorter and shorter over long periods of time, down to what it is now, 8 hours. And he may have something to this. I mean, think about cats. They sleep for 80% of the time. A lot of other animals do spend most of their time asleep. So it's not totally implausible that we were awake for shorter periods of time than we are now. So now then, that the human species is awake for longer periods of time, and so now, and with the Christ event, the logos that is radiating from the sun and the sun's rays can perfuse the human heart. Let's say the heart chakra, the anahata chakra, which we talked about in a previous video, I think in the Gospel of Luke, that it can awaken the sense of love and compassion because the sunlight streams the logos as love through everything, through all things, and especially it is focally concentrated in this one being, the Christ being, who has to come down, and we have to witness what happened to him in order for that to evoke our love and compassion, and to create a religion based on love and compassion that will resonate through the human species and actually transubstantiate the earth to change its auric field to vibrate at a higher frequency. That was the task of the Christ event, and that's why it's so important for Steiner. I noticed this lecture was given in 1908, just before he broke away from the Theosophists around 1910. He started breaking away from them precisely over the issue of Christ, and Charles Leadbeater saying that Jiddu Krishnamurti was the reincarnation of Christ, whereas for Steiner there is no reincarnation of Christ. It's just a one-time only event that has happened. It's the axial pivot around which the entirety of the evolution of the Earth in its fourth phase will take place. It has 3 future phases to go: a Jupiter phase, a Venus phase, and a Vulcan phase. So presumably these correspond to, it's like 7 days of the week that correspond to the 7 epochs in the book of Genesis that are misinterpreted, Steiner says, as 24-hour days, but they're actually epochs that during which God created the solar system. And he's only concerned with the solar system. That's the thing about Steiner. He's not talking about the entire cosmos. Other things are happening on other solar systems where other suns are radiating logoi of love, let's say. Other dramas are happening. He's only concerned about here in this particular solar system and the pivotal axial event, which is the Christ event, the incarnation of Christ, and the creation of the I Am, because he says that with respect to the Old Testament, we have there a group soul. It matters who you're descended from. You have to be, in order to be a true Jew, you have to have a Jewish mother. So its descent is traced through the bloodline there. So it's a group soul. I and Father Abraham are one. Is what we say in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we say, I am. Christ brings a religion not of blood. It doesn't matter who you're descended from. It's a religion of credo. All you have to do is say, I believe. I believe. As an individual, this works for me. And then so it is a religion that brings the I am, that makes it, maximizes it, and makes it further and further possible for it to evolve. And this has been the West's mission ever since, is to develop this sense of the ego, to develop this sense of the I, the principle, the I am. Okay, so that's the upshot of this third lecture.